At Christmas dinner, my stepdaughter said, "Cheers to everyone, except my fake dad who thinks money can make him my real dad." Everyone laughed, including my wife, her mom, who also said, "Such a funny world. Fake dads can never be real." What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Susan Clark from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. For most of my adult life, I wore the mask of contentment so convincingly that I almost believed it myself. My name is Richard, and I was a provider before I was ever anything else. A title I earned, not inherited. I met my wife, Trina, when her daughter was just 5. From the start, there were rules, hard lines drawn in soft words. We agreed she would call me Dad, that the past would stay buried, and that we would build something new from the fragments life had handed us. I wasn't naive about what I was stepping into. Loving a child who isn't yours by blood requires a kind of love that doesn't expect recognition. I signed up for that. I signed up for Band-Aids and bedtime stories, for teacher conferences and midnight stomach bugs. I was the one who picked her up when she fell, who showed up with balloons when she aced her science fair. I poured myself into the role, not to be applauded, but because I believed family was made by effort, not blood. I remember how small she was the first time she hugged me without prompting. It was on a random Tuesday after school. She came home with a drawing, stick figures and crayon, and said, "That's you and me and Mommy." She'd written "my family" at the top in shaky letters. That moment sealed it for me. I was her dad, not her stepdad, not the guy who showed up halfway through her childhood. I was it. Over the years, I paid for her piano lessons, her braces, her school trips. When she turned 16, I surprised her with a used car. She squealed and threw her arms around me like she did when she was little. There were times she would call me Rich instead of Dad, but I chalked it up to teenage rebellion. I didn't press it. I figured that was the rhythm of raising someone. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But I never expected that the whole foundation was quietly crumbling behind my back. Looking back now, there were signs. Moments that didn't make sense at the time, but gnawed at me afterward. Like the day I overheard her on the phone with a friend, saying, "He's not even my real dad, but whatever." I didn't react. I tucked it away, convincing myself that maybe she meant it biologically, not emotionally. Trina noticed my silence that evening and asked if I was okay. I lied and said I was just tired. But I wasn't. I was unraveling. Just a little, just enough to feel it in my chest. There was an ache that hadn't been there before, something old and sore being stirred. Still, I didn't ask questions. I trusted her. Both of them. Maybe that was my first mistake, confusing silence with safety. What I didn't know then, and what would become the catalyst for everything that followed, was that Trina had told her the truth when she turned 10. Behind closed doors, with no warning, no consultation, she revealed what we had agreed to keep secret. "He's not your real dad," she told her, "but he loves you like one." That one sentence unraveled 10 years of belief in a heartbeat. And she never told me she said it. I kept parenting in the dark, assuming we were still writing the same story. But they had moved on without me. She had planted a seed of doubt in our daughter's heart and left me to water it unknowingly with every act of love and sacrifice. The shift in our daughter wasn't immediate, but over time it became undeniable. She grew colder. Her gratitude dulled. She would roll her eyes when I offered help, bristle when I gave advice. At family dinners, I became the outsider who didn't quite get the joke. I chalked it up to adolescence, the rough years. "She'll come around," Trina would say, dismissing my concern with a wave of her wine glass. But beneath her casual tone was something brittle, like she was afraid I might see the cracks she'd hidden for so long. I wish I could say I confronted it then, that I demanded the truth, but I didn't. I wanted so badly for my reality to stay intact that I ignored the tremors, hoping they'd fade. Instead, I buried my suspicions under more giving. I paid for her college applications, took her and her friends out to celebrate high school graduation, and even helped co-sign her apartment lease near campus. I kept showing up, kept proving myself, still clinging to the belief that love, real love, would win out eventually. But love without honesty is a performance. And eventually, even the best performances come to an end. Christmas in our house had always been a big deal. Trina loved to go all out. Matching pajamas, endless platters of food, cinnamon-scented candles burning in every room. I spent most of Christmas Eve stringing up lights and prepping the roast while she coordinated the table settings. Our daughter, Lena, was coming home from college, and we wanted everything perfect. I told myself this year would be different. Better. I'd pushed away that strange distance I'd felt from her in recent years, chalking it up to stress or growth, or just the natural cooling of relationships as children grow older. Still, a piece of me held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, things would warm up again this holiday. That hope, in retrospect, feels cruel. The night started off well enough. Our small circle of family friends arrived with wine and gifts. Laughter flowed as we passed around appetizers and swapped stories. Lena walked in fashionably late, smiling just enough to make me think maybe I was imagining everything. She gave Trina a long hug and then turned to me with a simple, "Hey." No Dad. No Merry Christmas. Just hey. I tried not to let it land too hard. I offered her a glass of wine, and she took it without a word. Trina slipped an arm around my waist and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, like everything was fine. Like we were one big happy unit. I convinced myself to believe it. I wanted to. We all gathered around the dining table shortly after 8. It was beautiful, candles flickering, plates stacked with roast beef, mashed potatoes, honey-glazed carrots. I carved the roast like I always did. Lena sat across from me, her phone face down next to her plate. For a moment, it felt normal, like we were still us. Then someone raised a glass to make a toast. It was one of those loose, cheerful moments when everyone expected something light and sentimental. And that's when Lena stood up. She clinked her glass with a spoon and smiled at everyone around the table. "Cheers to the people who've always been there," she began. "To my mom, the realest woman I know. To our friends, our neighbors, and to everyone who made tonight happen." Her eyes slid over to me. "Well, everyone except my fake dad, who still thinks money can make him my real dad." The laughter was sharp and immediate. A few chuckled awkwardly, not sure if it was meant to sting. But Trina? She full-on laughed. Threw her head back like Lena had just told the best joke of the evening. Then she added, "Such a funny world. Fake dads can never be real." In that moment, the room dimmed. Not literally, but in that strange way perception does when your heart cracks just a little too fast. I stared at them both, Lena beaming with smug satisfaction, and Trina, the woman I'd built a life with, co-signing the humiliation like it was harmless fun. My chest felt hollow. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. Something about the quiet seemed to confuse them more than if I'd yelled. I raised my glass slightly, took a sip, and let the laughter pass over me like cold wind. I'd never felt less like part of a family in my life. The rest of dinner passed in a haze. People moved on quickly, sensing the awkwardness but not brave enough to address it. I smiled when I needed to, nodded, passed dishes, kept my hands from shaking. Trina leaned over once to whisper, "Don't take it so seriously, it's just a joke." But her tone wasn't apologetic. It was dismissive, almost irritated that I wasn't playing along. I gave her a half smile, the kind I'd mastered during years of swallowing things that didn't sit right. I'd let a lot slide for the sake of peace. This wouldn't be one of them. That night, after everyone left and the house grew quiet, I sat alone in the living room. The tree lights blinked rhythmically, casting soft reflections on the window. I could hear Trina moving around upstairs, humming to herself like nothing had happened. And all I could think was, "You told her. You told her and never told me." I replayed the moment over and over in my head. The laughter, the way Lena looked so confident, so certain that she was right to say what she said, and the way Trina, my wife, the woman I trusted, validated it without flinching. It wasn't just the joke. It was the years of deception. The decision she made to tell our daughter the truth behind my back, then let me parent blindly. It was the quiet cruelty of it all, masked behind laughter and holiday cheer. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to her, staring at the ceiling while she drifted off easily, unaware that something had shifted inside me. Something final. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was stunned, hollow, like the floor had fallen out from under a house I thought I built on solid ground. And somewhere around 3 a.m., I made my decision, not with rage, but with clarity. The next morning, while she was still asleep, I got up, poured myself a cup of black coffee, and called my lawyer. It's time, I said. We need to start the process of protecting what's mine. By the time Trina came downstairs the next morning, my world had already started shifting. She breezed into the kitchen like nothing had happened, still wearing her red satin robe, humming an off-key version of Let It Snow. She poured herself coffee, kissed my cheek, and asked what I wanted for breakfast. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I didn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. Not the way I used to. I saw someone who could laugh while her husband was gutted at the family table. Someone who could build a life with you for 15 years and still decide on her own when to rewrite the truth. I stirred my coffee slowly and said, "We need to talk." She paused, sensing the change in my voice. "About what?" she asked, casual but cautious. I leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching her over the rim of my mug. "Lena's toast," I said. "The joke. The fact that she knows I'm not her biological father. You told her, didn't you?" Her face fell just slightly, a flash of guilt quickly replaced by annoyance. "She was 10, Richard," she said. "She deserved to know. I told her in a way that made it clear you loved her like your own. It was the right thing to do. But we agreed not to," I said quietly. "We made that decision together before we got married. You told me we'd raise her as our daughter, no caveats." "No, but..." My voice cracked slightly, but I held it. "You robbed me of that promise. You made a choice that wasn't just yours to make." She sighed, setting her coffee down harder than necessary. "Don't be so dramatic. I was her mother. I had the right to tell her the truth. She had questions. And frankly, you should be grateful she even calls you anything at all." That was the moment something inside me snapped, not with rage, but with quiet finality. I saw it then, the shift in her eyes, the calculation. She hadn't told Lena out of principle. She told her out of control. And every year after, every eye roll, every cold shoulder, every moment Lena pushed me away while I kept giving more. Those weren't just normal teenage phases. They were seeds sown by a truth I never got to participate in. I had been parenting a daughter with one hand tied behind my back, and they both let me keep dancing like a fool, thinking we were still in sync. I left the house that day, got in my car, and drove without a destination for hours. I stopped eventually at a rest area off the highway and sat in the parking lot, staring at the steering wheel like it could offer me answers. The wind rocked the car gently as I thought about the years I'd spent sacrificing, canceling trips, working overtime, saying no to things I wanted so Lena could have what she needed. I thought about the way Trina had always insisted we were a team, and how now I saw the lie behind her smile. My chest ached, not with grief exactly, but with a kind of stunned betrayal that left me hollow. When I finally returned home, Trina was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone, as if nothing had ruptured between us that morning. I didn't speak. I walked past her and into my office, shut the door, and began opening files. Over the next few days, I quietly shifted things into motion. I contacted my lawyer and instructed him to begin restructuring the ownership of all my properties and assets. The house, the investment properties, the accounts I had once placed in both our names. I had built a quiet empire over the years, nothing flashy, but solid. I made sure everything I had ever earned was redirected into a trust, one that excluded her entirely. The legal process wasn't fast, but it was steady. I spent the next 3 months playing a role. I kissed her good morning. I asked Lena about school when she called. I cooked dinners, paid bills, even laughed at TV shows I wasn't really watching. But inside, I was already gone. I had buried the man who once believed we were a family. What remained was a version of myself I hadn't known existed. Cold, methodical, patient. Not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. Every night after they went to bed, I'd sit at the dining room table and review documents. Title transfers, trust fund statements, asset reallocations, Lena's college payments were retracted from the auto-pay system. Her lease guarantor form was voided. I wasn't vindictive, I was surgical. They had spent 10 years slowly dismantling the foundation of our family with half-truths and mockery. I was simply removing the last supports. Let them see how solid things were without me holding it all together. It amazed me how little either of them noticed. Trina was too distracted with her volunteer events and weekly brunches. Lena barely called except to ask for money, which I continued sending, for now. I wanted to make sure the rug was pulled out at the precise moment it would land loudest. I wasn't interested in confrontation. I wanted them to feel the silence, the emptiness, the absence of a man they thought they could take for granted forever. Then one morning, everything was finalized. My lawyer called to say the trust was locked, the divorce draft was ready, and all financial ties had been severed. "Are you ready to proceed?" he asked. I paused, not because I had doubts, but because I realized that I didn't feel relief. I felt clarity, and that was enough. "Yes," I said. "It's time." It was a Thursday when I chose to end it. Not a dramatic Friday evening blowout or some symbolic weekend separation. Just an ordinary weekday, as unassuming as the final breath of something long dead. The house was unusually quiet that morning. Trina was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, a mug of green tea beside her. She looked up as I entered and smiled like she always did, as if we were still the couple we used to pretend to be. There was a moment, a flash, maybe, where I wondered if I should say something, give her a warning. But then I remembered the way she laughed at my expense while our daughter degraded me at the dinner table. That laugh had done something to me. It told me everything I needed to know about what I meant to her. And so, I reached into the side drawer of the cabinet, pulled out the envelope, and set it in front of her. "What's this?" she asked, the smile still curling at the corners of her mouth. She reached for it casually, like I'd just handed her a bill or a recipe I'd printed. She slid out the papers, skimmed the first page, and froze. I watched her pupils dilate. Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the thick stack of neatly clipped documents. "You're joking," she said finally. This is a joke, right?" I sat across from her. Calm. Steady. "No, it's not." Her eyes met mine, wide with confusion. "Richard, this is insane. Divorce? Why? We're fine. We've been fine." "We've been pretending," I said. "Or maybe you've been pretending and I've just been surviving it." She looked like she might be sick. She pushed the papers away from her, as if touching them too long might burn her. "This is about Christmas, isn't it? That stupid joke? You can't be serious." "That joke," I said, leaning forward, "was the tip of the knife you've been twisting for a decade. You told Lena I wasn't her real father behind my back. You let me keep parenting her, paying for everything, loving her like she was mine, while you two shared some quiet secret. Then you laughed when she humiliated me in front of a room full of people. That wasn't a joke. That was contempt." "She didn't mean it like that," Trina insisted. "She's a teenager. She's 20, I snapped. "And you're 50. What's your excuse?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She had nothing. The silence stretched between us like a chasm, thick with years of unspoken resentment and betrayal. "We can fix this," she said finally, her voice small. "We can go to therapy. We can talk to her. I didn't realize it hurt you that much. I swear to God, I didn't know." "No," I said. "You knew. You just didn't care. You thought I'd keep taking it. And honestly, I might have, if you hadn't laughed." Tears welled in her eyes, and for a moment, I saw the woman I used to love. The woman I built a life with, whose daughter I raised, whose future I once tried to protect. But the problem was, that woman didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never had. And I wasn't going to lose myself trying to resuscitate something that had been dead behind my back for years. "I've already moved everything out of joint ownership," I continued. "The house is mine. The investments, the accounts, they're protected. You'll get nothing. The prenup is airtight." Her voice rose with panic. "You're leaving me with nothing? After all these years?" "You left me with nothing first," I said. "You left me with a lie." She broke down then, sobbing into her hands. Her shoulders shook, and I waited. I didn't comfort her. I didn't flinch. I let her feel the weight of everything she thought would never come back to her. For years, I had filled every gap, caught every fall, carried every burden, and the one time I needed to be protected, she handed me over like a punchline. No more. When Lena called later that day, I didn't answer. She texted me a few hours later, asking why Mom was crying and what was going on. I left it on read. I'd spent so many years being their stability, their unacknowledged spine. If they were shaking now, it meant the structure had finally been taken away. That evening, Trina tried again. She came into the bedroom, hair wet from the shower, eyes red and swollen. She sat on the edge of the bed where I'd already packed my suitcase. "Please," she whispered. "You can't throw all of this away." I turned to her slowly. "I'm not throwing anything away," I said. "I'm just done being treated like I'm disposable." She reached for my hand. I stepped back. "I want you to really sit with this," I said. "Because every time you called me your partner while hiding the truth, every time you laughed with Lena instead of correcting her, every time you watched me sacrifice and said nothing, you were making a choice. You don't get to be shocked now." And with that, I walked out of the house we'd once called ours. 3 weeks after I left, the silence began to echo in places they never expected. Trina sent her first official email the day after the papers were served. It was short, 3 sentences asking if I was sure, followed by a line about how she hoped we could still talk things through. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The trust had been broken too deliberately, too cleanly. I'd given them the benefit of the doubt for too long, explained away eye rolls, forgiven passive slights, excused subtle distance. Now, I was past the point of analysis. I was simply done. Lena's call came next. I was walking into a bank when my phone buzzed. Her name lit up across the screen, and for a moment, I stood frozen outside the glass doors. I thought of her as a little girl, holding my hand in a crowded mall, her grip tight and trusting. That memory hurt more than anything else. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. I didn't listen. If she had something important to say, she could write it down. Words spoken in tears are too easy to take back. I wanted permanence. Truth without rehearsal. Within a month, word began to spread. Mutual friends started reaching out. People I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had the time. "You sure this isn't a misunderstanding?" one friend asked. "Families go through stuff." I let him speak. He didn't know. None of them did. They only saw the surface: vacation photos, holiday cards, polite appearances at neighborhood barbecues. They hadn't seen me staying up till 2 a.m. researching college grants for Lena, hadn't heard the way she muttered "whatever" when I offered to help her move into her dorm. They didn't understand how betrayal can wear the face of routine for years before it reveals its teeth. Trina's financial panic came soon after. She texted me about the mortgage first. Asked if I was still covering it, since, technically, we were still married during most of the proceedings. I sent her the contact info for the attorney handling the trust and left it at that. Within days, I heard through one of her cousins that she'd moved back in with her sister temporarily. The house was too much without my support. She'd never had to worry about the bills before. I'd always taken care of them quietly. I liked it that way, or thought I did. I mistook control for peace. Lena was hit harder. She tried calling again, and again I ignored it. Then one day, she left a voicemail, not angry or cruel, just shocked. "I don't get it," she said. "You've always been there. Why would you stop now?" The irony hit me like a brick. I'd spent years being there, and she hadn't even noticed. The moment she learned I wasn't her biological father, everything I did became transactional in her eyes. That toast on Christmas didn't come out of nowhere. It was marinated in a decade of entitlement, fed by a mother who couldn't resist rewriting history to suit her version of the truth. When I officially canceled the payments to Lena's college, she didn't contact me. Her mother did. Trina sent a long email full of desperation and veiled threats. How could I do this to our daughter? How was she supposed to stay in school? I stared at the screen, the words blurring under my gaze. Our daughter. The same daughter you both laughed at me over? The one who reduced me to a fake in front of family? No, she was hers now. Fully and completely. Let them figure it out without my name attached to their tuition checks and rent payments. Then the begging started. Her brother called. Her mother. Even one of Lena's professors sent me a carefully worded email asking if I might reconsider. They all framed it the same way. Not as betrayal, but as misunderstanding, as if I had overreacted, as if what had happened at that dinner table hadn't been years in the making. I responded only once, to Trina's sister, who had always been the most neutral of the bunch. I said, I didn't stop loving them. They stopped respecting me, and I don't fund disrespect. That message got around fast. The tone changed. The calls stopped. And in the vacuum they left behind, I found something I hadn't expected: peace. Not happiness. Not yet. But stillness. A quiet in my home, in my routine, in my own head. I began sleeping through the night again. I reconnected with a few old friends I had let drift away during the marriage. I started going on long walks after work, listening to music instead of worrying if I'd done enough for the people who only noticed when I stopped doing. There was one last text from Lena. I read it 3 times before deleting it. It said, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But she never said what she was sorry for. For the toast? The years of silent rejection? For treating my love like an ATM with a face? I didn't need her apology. I needed her to learn. And maybe she would. Maybe someday she'd understand what it meant to be loved deeply and taken for granted completely. That lesson is brutal, but it sticks. I didn't block them. That would have made it seem like I was still angry. I wasn't. I just didn't answer. Sometimes, silence is the most honest boundary you can draw. 6 months passed before I even realized how much lighter my life had become. It wasn't immediate. Healing never is. At first, the silence felt like punishment, a kind of aching void where routine used to be. There were mornings when I'd wake up expecting the sounds of Trina humming off-key in the kitchen or the buzz of Lena's phone as she paced through the hallway. Those habits had imprinted themselves into my daily rhythm. Their absence didn't feel like freedom at first. It felt like something had been amputated. But as the weeks wore on, I began to appreciate the quiet. I started drinking my coffee on the back porch, alone, with no one interrupting my thoughts. The stillness that once seemed suffocating had turned into clarity. I found a small condo across town, near the lake. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, lots of windows. Nothing flashy. It wasn't the house I built with Trina, and maybe that was the point. It didn't carry the weight of false memories. The walls didn't echo with old arguments or betrayals tucked under smiles. Everything there was mine. Every plate in the cupboard. Every towel folded just the way I liked. I even bought a small bookshelf and started reading again. Real books. Not business articles or tax codes. Fiction. Stories where the endings made sense, where betrayal didn't go unpunished and the good guy didn't have to justify himself for doing what was right. People still asked questions. Some friends were supportive. Others were quiet, unsure of what side to stand on. But I didn't need them to understand. I'd spent too many years trying to be understood by people who used my sacrifices as a punchline. Now, I lived for peace. I stopped explaining myself. That was the real turning point. I no longer needed validation that I'd made the right choice. The right choice had become obvious every time I saw my bank account still full, my calendar cleared of forced obligations, my evenings filled with whatever I wanted instead of who I needed to please. One day, about 3 months after the final decree was signed, I ran into Lena at a grocery store. She was standing in the frozen foods aisle, holding a bag of discount chicken. Her hair was pulled back, dark circles under her eyes, wearing a hoodie that swallowed her frame. She looked up and saw me. Her face froze, and for a second, we both stood there in stunned silence. She took a step forward. I didn't. Hey, she said quietly. Her voice cracked like it used to when she cried as a kid. Can we talk? I stared at her. I felt nothing. No anger. No desire for revenge. Just a hollow sadness for what could have been. I don't think there's anything left to say, I said calmly. She looked like she wanted to argue, but didn't. Her lips parted, then closed. Okay, she whispered and stepped back. I miss you. I nodded, but didn't respond. Missing me now was easy. Missing me when I was showing up every day, loving her unconditionally, would have meant something. I walked past her without looking back. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel just like I had that first night after Christmas. Except this time, I didn't feel broken. I felt clean. Whole. Trina never reached out again. Word got around about how she ended up couch surfing for a while before renting a small apartment downtown. Her sister, the only one I ever truly respected, sent me a message months later. It wasn't to plead or apologize. She just said, "I don't blame you. I probably would have done the same." That one meant something. It was the closest I'd come to feeling seen since all of it began. I've learned that boundaries don't have to be loud to be strong. Sometimes, the most powerful act of self-preservation is walking away with your head held high and your wallet still closed. I still think about them from time to time, not with bitterness, but with a kind of distant gratitude. They taught me what I wouldn't tolerate again. They showed me what betrayal looks like with a smile. And they reminded me that love, real love, is not just about showing up. It's about being respected when you do. I don't regret the years I spent with them. I regret staying silent for so long. I regret not drawing the line sooner. But now, I wake up every day knowing I stood up for myself when it counted most. And that kind of peace, you can't buy it. You have to earn it. Sometimes walking away isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your dignity. If you've ever been the one holding everything together only to be laughed at when it all breaks, this story is for you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. When do you finally say, "That's enough"? Let's talk about loyalty, silence, and the power of leaving. See you soon in the next story.